Hi everyone, my name is Lexi, and today I will be discussing severe to profound intellectual disabilities. So, before I begin with accommodations, it's important for us to differentiate what is the difference between severe and profound intellectual disabilities, but also what is an intellectual disability. An intellectual disability manifests itself through major delays in development and with communication. However, these can range from mild to profound. So today I am talking about the two most intensive um, categories. So, individuals with severe intellectual disabilities are limited in communication, as I said, but this limitation is narrowed down to single words and phrases. And these individuals often require extensive care and daily activities like school. So, it's possible that, or it's very likely that a paraprofessional would be in the classroom, and they are care dependent. And individuals with this, as a teacher, it's important for us to acknowledge this, often use gestures to communicate as they cannot always verbally communicate their needs. And it's important to understand that maybe modifications must be made for they often have limitations in understanding abstract concepts. So that's concepts like numbers, time, and just overall problem solving. Now, moving up an intensity level is profound intellectual disabilities, and these individuals require high intensity support. So, it might not be likely that they would be in your general education classroom all day, but it is possible that they will be in your classroom. And according to both, they have very limited communication skills and they also often have physical limitations. So, with that, these individuals cannot always verbally demonstrate and they cannot always gesture. So, AACs or augmentative communication devices is a way for them to be able to non verbally communicate and allow them to demonstrate their understanding. But for just a second, I want us to go back to this graph right here. I want us to look at the different levels of intellectual disabilities. As you can see, it ranges from mild to profound, and we are dealing with about 11% of all intellectual disabilities. And the difference between these categories from mild to profound, or specifically severe to profound, are their ability to independently communicate and adjust to certain behaviors. So, because of their differences in communication and their ability to do things independently, that's how they're categorized. And it's important to acknowledge as educators, according to ScholarWorks, that an appropriate education requires communication, self actualization, and social justice. We must ensure that all students have an equitable education despite their disability or intensity level. And with that, we need to be able to accommodate our students. So, one way to do this is to allow for a longer processing time. This can look like having your other students who might not need extra support working independently while you work in a small group with these individuals. Um, Particularly with intellectual disabilities, but just maybe individuals who need reinforcement. With this, you can reinforce the concepts, especially if they're abstract. You can try to make them more concrete to further understanding. But also, just while you're asking questions to the class, you can allow for a longer response time. This would allow your students who might not be able to verbally communicate the ability to go onto their communication devices. Of course, this might not always be the case because of accessibility, but that would allow them to be able to formulate a response on their devices. With this, allowing students to use augmentative communication devices allow improvement for communication. So, with this, Patel said that their communication will be improved, and this allows them to communicate in a way that adapts to them. For not every student will be able to verbally discuss things with you. And another way to allow for a different communication method is through scribing. Individuals who might not be able to verbally communicate, or maybe not be able to physically write down their ideas, as maybe they have a physical limitation, like that is mainly common with profound intellectual disabilities, you can have them formulate their response either through an AAC device or verbally. And you can either, you as the teacher, a peer who's sitting next to them, or a paraprofessional can write down their responses. And according to Browder, teachers should engage students in a broad range of different communication skills. So this can basically allow them to acknowledge facial expressions and eye gaze and other just nonverbal communication skills. But it's important to access these for students. Another strategy that I really love is using constant time delay. And I have talked about this a little bit in my accommodation videos, but this is a prompting strategy that can be used to teach a variety of skills and behaviors for students. And the Nevada Dual Sensory Impairment Project talks a lot about constant time delay. And this is essentially allowing for a prompt or a stimuli. So as you see, this teacher is holding up an index card with, I think, a word on it, but it allows the student to immediately see the prompt and they must respond. And if they don't respond, then they immediately are gratified by the teacher telling them. That's what constant time delay is. But there's another form that allows you to adjust the like gratification time, so that can allow students to think a bit more. But initially, this is great for individuals with intellectual disabilities, for they are immediately gratified with the answer. And according to Kaczynski, the performance of all students is improved with this instructional technique. So it doesn't even have to be just with your students with intellectual disabilities. It can be with your entire general education classroom, and they will all improve. Another thing that's incredibly important is to define terms and concepts aloud. For this allows for differentiation in information processing, as our students with intellectual disabilities might need more concrete and tactile information rather than just being able to use context clues. As I said earlier, abstract concepts for these individuals it's difficult for them to decode. So allowing for an accessible decoding system or a different information processing system is incredibly helpful for them to make connections to things. So being able to define concepts and terms aloud is so helpful. Alongside this, allowing for a sensory area for these students to go and regulate their emotions and just regulate their overall stimulation or overstimulation is so important. According to the Children's Guild, a sensory area allows children to learn how to interact with the world around them. So this allows them to regulate and allow them to use the resources surrounding them to regulate their emotions. I think this is really great. And it's important to allow for a low lighting, quiet area for these students to allow them to regulate their emotions. Alongside defining terms, allowing for verbal demonstrations is so helpful. For once again, it allows for differentiation and information processing, but it also allows speech to be supplemented as opposed to just having written demonstrations. It's important for us to be able to verbally communicate things to students, for not all students will be able to decode what they are reading or what they're writing. So it's important to utilize speech as much as we are writing things on the board and allowing students to read. It is just as important. And another thing that I really love, and I mentioned earlier, that students with severe intellectual disabilities often gesture as they might not be able to verbally communicate. So, incorporating gestures into the classroom normalizes students using gestures regularly, but it also makes a very concrete difference in it allows for us to be like, this is us transitioning now. We are all done. That's my favorite. All done, and that signifies that we are transitioning to a new topic, and it allows for a clear distinction that we are moving on. And lastly, this is so important, allowing for a modified rubric for students with intellectual disabilities is so important. This allows us to assess growth on the student's level and allows us to meet them where they are intellectually instead of expecting them to rise to an unattainable level. So what I like is that 0 for this one specifically, that I found on my board maker, which is by a general education teacher, so it is effective and it does work and it's been practiced, allows for I think really accessible expectations for these students. It's not out of reach for them. Like for contribution, full points is fully engaged most of the time. It has expectations that students can meet. And with this, every child deserves an equitable education and should be allowed to reach their fullest potential. And by using the accommodations that I used in this video, I believe such can be done. And here are my references. Thank you.